Hello. All right, we are on number 9, gateway number 9 for the heroine's journey. This is all about finding the heart of the inner masculine, healing the inner masculine. And this can overlap with the healing of the mother-daughter split. And it's important to recognize not only the division between ourselves and our own feminine, and as well as the mother, not only our own mother, but also the archetype. There's so many layers. But in order to truly embody and integrate that, we must also recognize and honor our own inner masculine. And it gets uncomfortable, and we have to be, again, once the heroine has reached this part of the journey, she's probably already faced some of the most uncomfortable positions that she could possibly be in. This one becomes uncomfortable in a sense of there's like a static. It's sort of like where you put two opposite ends or two magnets together on the wrong ends, and they don't want to stick. That's the metaphor of what I feel like this part of the heroine's journey feels like, is just trying to make two negative poles stick together, and they're just fighting you. And that's what it feels like when we're, healing that mother-daughter split, recognizing the division. We also have to acknowledge and recognize the inner masculine within ourselves. And so it's all about the mirror. And I suggest going back to one of our previous lives, videos on the polarities of relationship dynamics, because I talk about this extensively, the anima and the animus. And Marion Woodman has a really good quote. Let me see if I can find it without doing too much flipping and turning. Aha, she says, so long as a woman accepts a man's archetypal projection, she is trapped in a male understanding of reality. So we're going to dig into that and why that applies to healing the inner masculine. This is an amazing book, Marion Woodman. I always recommend Marion Woodman's book. She's great. So once we've healed that mother-daughter split, that feminine split between us, you've got the healing process. You're probably going through the healing process as you begin to acknowledge, recognize your own inner masculine. That means we're understanding what the cost was. What did it cost us to be separated from our feminine, and not only our own inner feminine, but the feminine traits of our own mother? What was the cost of that physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually? And then we want to look at well, I'll back up real quick, because Marion Woodman also has a really great quote where she talks about, in an interview, of the women who are trying to reconnect with our bodies. What happens is when we go through that, when we're trying to connect with our bodies as the patriarchal daughter, meaning where our approach is masculine, we're still disconnected from the body as we try to connect with the body. So there's a lot of cultural, social, external emphasis on the aesthetics and fitness and athletic development and weight loss, or just how we look. And so what we end up doing through this endeavor is to change our physicality or improve our physicality without actually being connected to ourselves physically, being connected to the body. We want to shape the body, modify the body, strengthen the body, lean out the body, maybe tighten the body, doing all of these things, but not through a connection to the body. So there's that split. And that's when she talks about that, it's very indicative, almost metaphorically, of how a woman who's wanting to reconnect with her feminine nature, her true feminine nature, is going about it in a masculine way. She's still not connected to the body. She's just focused on the body, which is a masculine thing. So it's like taking the skills of the masculine, which have been at war with the wisdom of the feminine, or the spirit of our masculine selves at war with the soul of our feminine selves. And so when she's referring to that, and I'm going to go back to it because it's a great metaphor, is that we are focused on the body rather than connected with the body. And that's a very distinct way to look at that split. Is so if we're healing that mother-daughter split and reclaiming the feminine within ourselves without truly looking inward and acknowledging the masculine within ourselves, then another quote she has, oh gosh, well, I'll have to dig to it, but it's so good. It's where she says, if we it's this one. Where women have not been integrated in their own femininity, that means they've not looked into themselves for their own inner shadow sister who still values herself according to the laws of the old patriarch. What that means is, as you're integrating that reclaimed femininity in you, if you go and that's it, that's the work, that's all you got to do. I am now a feminine, intuitive, dreaming, receptive being, without acknowledging that inner shadow of that the sister who's still relating to the old patriarchal laws, then she puts herself in a very dangerous position if she takes the veil off too soon. The result, tragedy, is clear in the lives of, for example, many nuns who have removed their veils, lost the security of the nunnery walls, and found themselves unable to cope with the sexual, materialistic, and brutal world that they do not understand. So they fluctuate between their freedom in the eyes of God, patriarchal, and their slavery to guilt and fear. So that's like, she uses that, again, I use that quote from her as another great metaphor of, you can heal the mother-daughter split, you can reclaim your femininity without looking within for the masculine, not outside, not the external. Then you are putting yourself in danger to a world that you only see through that lens. So it goes back to that other quote, as long as a woman accepts the man's archetypal projection, she is trapped in a male understanding of reality, while believing she has reclaimed the feminine self. So we have to look within. And so this part of this gateway, again, will overlap. But she has to see in what ways the inner masculine and the inner feminine has been at war, trying to neuter each other's dual forces, so to speak. So in Healing the Mother-Daughter Split, Gateway 8, we're talking about when we recognize the division, there's those, four main complexes of the mother. There's the hypertrophy of the mother, the identification with the mother, the overdeveloped eros, and then the resistance to the mother. And some of these complexes, a daughter can have two, right? Two of them that are very differently. It could be sort of I'll use mine as an example. My mother complex was sort of a blend between the hypertrophy of the mother with the resistance to the mother. So I identified with the maternal role while suppressing my own individuality and my own sexuality, and at the same time rejected and rebelled against my mother. So like anything she did, I'm doing the opposite of it. And yet still I'm identifying or over-identifying with that maternal role, which it's like in my mind, I'm rebelling against her. Well, actually, unconsciously, I'm pretty much aligning myself with everything she did, just like in a different way. And so that becomes the illusion. But that illusion, or the complex of the mother complex I had as the daughter, made me the patriarchal daughter. So that's me rejecting my feminine qualities and my roles, or the traditional roles of them. I may be embracing certain roles, but in a very masculine way. I can become overly masculine, very alpha. Attracting partners that are a little bit more feminine. Again, when you go back to the video that I did on the, the dynamics of polarity dynamics in relationships. I go really deep into that. So the woman who is more embodied consciously with her masculine, the patriarchal daughter, will attract a man who is more consciously embodying the feminine aspects in which she suppresses. And this is why relationships are the groundwork for individuation. You're coming together in a union with each other, the man and the woman, and we have attracted what we project. And what the other person has projected, we are attracted to. That becomes the union. And when we hit that constellation in the relationship, such as like a man who's very attracted to a woman who's more consciously embodied of the masculine, that represents the masculine in him that he suppresses. And she is attracted to his embodied feminine, in which she suppresses. Now, if she is more masculine, he likes that. She's independent. She's not codependent on me. She's not needy, all those things, all the things he fears. But then after a certain time, that constellation starts to cross the lines, and he may then become a victim in his mind of her masculinity. So it's like the same thing women may do. They want a man who's not controlling, not assertive, not domineering, not critical or judgmental, all of those things. Like she'll avoid a man who's controlling or any of those things because she has not yet fully embodied her own feminine nature, and she depends on him to be more of the feminine she cannot be. And at some point, then she's not going to like it when they hit that constellation in the relationship where he's not doing enough. He's too passive. He's too emotional. He is not definitive, and he is not decisive. And she starts to get angry about that. She gets frustrated. Maybe not even so much anger, just frustrated, and that builds up, because that frustration that's building up is actually the energetic force of her suppressed feminine saying, do you see me yet? Are you recognizing this stuff that you're starting to not like about him, which you loved about him in the beginning, and now it's annoying you? Do you not see that that's the force within yourself that you have suppressed for so long? And we're just asking you to take a look and like acknowledge me. That's what happens in these relationships. And I talk about the masculine woman and the feminine man because that is the most common dynamic I see in couples in my work. And I think it's just a modern day problem we have. And I think we're still looking at feminine and masculine as something outside that represents a thing or a person, not something that's in us, in ourselves. And so the patriarchal daughter will become the shadow of that masculine self that rejected the mother, the feminine traits, or competed with the mother. And then the shadow of the mother becomes the mother complex of the daughter. So that's one. I'll repeat that. The shadow of the mother complex, or the mother complex becomes the shadow of the patriarchal daughter because of the shadows of the mother. So I know that's like a big thing to swallow, so I'll say it differently. Our mothers all had their faults and their flaws. Those were the shadows. Those were the things in which we reject or we pull away from. Something in us that a feminine force is intuitively saying is pulling away from that. We recognize the shadow of our mother is so the needs that weren't met, or certain martyr type roles is not what we want to become. That's not the energy we want to spend. We see our mothers sacrificing, making themselves sick. We reject that. So we reject that which is the shadow of the mother and become the patriarchal daughter, which then once we heal that or start to acknowledge or become aware of that, we realize that the patriarchal daughter also developed her own shadows. And so there is the shadow of the masculine, thus healing the masculine within. Because along the way, what we have developed out of survival and in order to achieve success and to achieve acceptance in society and love and all of those myths that we talked about in the earlier chapter gateways, those developed their own shadows. And along the way, we're carrying the rejection of our mother's shadows, which are still operating in our subconscious as self-operating schemas. These are these things that we're avoiding, trying not to be. And once we heal the mother-daughter split, it blends into healing the inner masculine, because we are starting to acknowledge and recognize these were my mother's shadows. This is why I moved away and rejected it. I became the patriarchal daughter of my father and society, which then along my journey gathered their own shadows. And so we're bringing a light to both of those. And that's what healing the masculine is. Healing the masculine isn't, oh, we're not going to focus on the feminine anymore. We're not like, we did that. No, you're doing it together. And that's what becomes Gateway 10, the union of the two. And so when we look at, like I said, it's sort of like the battle between the masculine skills and the feminine wisdom. And now we're putting them all together. We're blending them in. So like I'm going to read off some feminine qualities that when in balance with the masculine, inner masculine, these are what our feminine qualities look like. Balanced with the masculine, inner masculine. We can be assertive, forward, direct. We are both warm and nurturing, supportive, creative, intuitive. We are intimate, open, inclusive, fertile, where we feel empowered. We're about networking, bringing things together, connecting. We're allowing things to happen, kind of going with the flow of certain cycles. There's I'm reading off my notes here. Sensual, when balanced with our own inner masculine, we can be sensual and erotic, soulful, calm, emotionally expressive, compassionate. We operate in cyclical time. We are body oriented, emotionally, creatively flowing, and open to change. When our emotions change, our creativity changes, we flow with it. We're inner focused, vulnerable, accepting, receptive, nonviolent. We are in touch with our dreams and our intuition and our emotions, and we're interdependent. So those are all, pretty good qualities of our own feminine self-expression when they are in balance with the masculine. If they are not balanced with our own inner masculine, they can come out as manipulative, indirect, passive-aggressive, controlling, smothering, unfocused, even passive, victim, martyr, and dependent. And so those are signs that your feminine is not balanced with your own inner masculine. You don't have a good yin and yang circle going on. It's more like a little squiggly line. Your masculine qualities, when in balance with your feminine, honestly, and I should note too, you may not have all of these, but these are just clues that your masculine qualities are in balance with your feminine. You're competitive, decisive, intellectual. You know how to make things happen. You know when to be disciplined, and you can call upon that. You are protective, compassionate, courageous, powerful, supportive, instructive, steady, consistent, ambitious, committed, responsible. You have a lot of perseverance. You're able to entertain many points of view. You also know how to discriminate or make distinctions. You know how to set limits and boundaries. You are rationally, not emotionally, you are rationally concerned with fairness and truth. And you can be objective and somewhat autonomous. You seek autonomy. Just a side note, a lot of women who have not healed their inner masculine see the the nature or quality of seeking autonomy as an entitlement, like someone who's entitled. And that's a clue. That's a clue that your inner masculine is not balanced. Independent, nurturing, sexual, goal-oriented and strategic, and you have a desire to create structure. So if you look at the qualities of the feminine and the masculine, you ask yourself, okay, well, what are the healthy, balanced feminine qualities that I have? What are the healthy masculine qualities I have in me? You can see, like, where do you have room to bring more to a more conscious embodiment? So when the masculine becomes out of balance with the feminine, it can become violent, assertive, loud, controlling, rigid, rational, and almost like a cutting, cold way. Also manipulative. Must have strict, like, law and order, rigidity. Everything must have a pattern and a structure. And anything outside of that can create anxiety, even frustration and anger. And out of balance masculine can be very emotionally unavailable. So when you look at the out of balance feminine versus the out of balance masculine, you can ask yourself, like, where are these shadows of the mother complex and the shadow of the patriarchal daughter? Where are they clashing, and what wants to come up? What wants to be seen? And a really good way to look at that is through activating these tangled up schemas of the unconscious by asking yourself questions. Maureen Murdoch has like a workbook on it where she activates these schemas through questions. Some of the good ones that she put, I modified some of them, is if you were, instead of looking outward towards like what men are healthy men to me and healthy masculine, or what's a toxic masculine, you ask yourself as if you're the man that's calling up your own inner masculine. So for example, the heroine would ask herself, if I were a man, I would be free to do what? If I were a man, I would be limited to do what? If I were a man, my focus would be on what? My priorities would be what? Some other questions I add in there is like, the things that would make me not want to be a man are fill in the blank. The things that would make me want to be a man are fill in the blank. And we're talking about be a man, meaning we're not focusing on masculine as a gender. It is a state of being. It's a force. It's an energetic force. So when I say I would not want to be a man because, well, for one, off the cuff, I always say I wouldn't want to be a man because I like all of my organs to be inside my body. So when I always think about guys walking and always having to adjust, I was like, nah, I would not want that. I don't like that. Would not like that. I feel like I would be limited by that. Although I do have to deal with under boob sweat, and most women can relate to that. But beyond that, I would not want to be a man because I would not want to carry the weight of providing for an entire family, let alone just myself. I feel like men tend to carry that expectation and that burden alone, traditionally, and in many ways, socially and culturally. I wouldn't want that. I would be terrified of that. I've been in that position, post-divorce and being a single mom. I felt like I stepped into that patriarchal role, and it's terrifying. I wouldn't want that. I would not want to be a man because I would feel that everything is skewed towards logic and reason rather than I would feel as though I wouldn't be able to express myself too emotionally or creatively without others assuming maybe I'm gay. And so just those two answers alone, you can start to see into that inner masculine within me that is going, But is that true? Is that really, really true? Because if I were a man, the honest truth is I could be whoever I want and do whatever I want. I can also be whoever I want and do whatever I want as a woman. If we're being honest and balancing the scales here, it's just true. So if my masculine were a little bit weighed heavier on what needs to come up into the consciousness, I have to keep asking questions. All right. Like, so when I hear the word masculine, I think or feel or imagine. So what immediately comes up for me is like, sort of like an avatar, like Joe Rogan, very masculine, very assertive, very protective, very conservative, rational, logic minded, but also open minded, but not like gaping minded. He's open, but not gaping minded. I see someone like Joe Rogan, or, when I think of masculine, I also think of my husband. He's very strong, sturdy. He's built. He has lots of muscles. He is very assertive, very direct, very ambitious, driven. He's a workhorse. And he also has a very good balance of his feminine, nurturing, emotional connectedness as well. So, again, when I think of masculine, I think of a man who looks like XYZ and embodies a good balance of his own feminine self. Some women may say, like, when I hear the word masculine, I think about control, manipulation, and abuse. Or you may hear the word masculine, and another heroine may say, when I hear the word masculine, I think about war and fighting and violence. Or you may think, I may think a lack of presence or abandonment. So it's important to ask yourself, when I think of the word masculine, what am I thinking, feeling, and imagining when I hear that word or when I think of that word? Because that's going to sort of shine a light on your own inner masculine, looking for you to navigate your way towards the heart of it. Your inner masculine is very loving and nurturing, but protecting. So then we want to go, if it's difficult to really navigate those questions, we go, okay, externally, what men in your life or avatars of men in your life do you not like, and why? What is it about their masculinity you do not like? I have a lot of clients who say Donald Trump. He's a narcissist. He's power hungry. He's a liar. He's a misogynist. So just stop right there, right? That's shining a light on your own inner masculine you've suppressed. So what is it about the masculine nature of Donald Trump that you see as patriarchal in such a negative way? Misogyny, right? That's the hate or discrimination towards women by objectifying or stereotyping them as less than. The question then to ask yourself, in what ways have you done that to yourself? In what ways do you denounce your own feminine power? What ways do you undermine or devalue or reject yourself as a woman? In what ways do you limit yourself as a woman, as a traditional carrier of these qualities? What ways do you reject that? Do you avoid being vulnerable? Do you avoid being emotionally expressive? Do you question your own intuition? Well, that's your own inner misogynist who wants to be recognized and come up to the surface and go, maybe that's the inner masculine who's just trying to create a checks and balances of your own overdriven feminine nature, which you then will try to control through your own masculine. So maybe the masculine wants to come up and be more of a healing, supportive partner to these qualities. Another way, what are some characteristics of men or avatars of men that I do like the masculine characteristics of? So like one, I love the masculine characteristics of my husband. I love the masculine characteristics of people like Joe Rogan. my mentor, Paul Chek. I love the masculine characteristics that he carries and embodies. I have lots of friends that carry these qualities that I can think of those. So like, I'll pull a friend out of the mix. He is very in touch with his masculine, and he embodies it in every stereotypical way. Big German, really good in, fighting and combat, very successful. Yet at the same time, he's also very connected with his own feminine. He is in a partnership with a woman who is also on the surface very masculine. She's a fighter. She knows combat. She does that for a living. And he allows her to be that. So he knows when to fall back into the feminine when she is in the masculine. He also knows when to rise up into his masculine so that she can feel safe to soften and be vulnerable. He's like, without trying, he's very good at that, just always has been. And shout out to Kale, love you in California. He's amazing. And my husband is very much like that too. We still find our little constellations in our relationship sometimes, but what we notice through much more awareness these is, so Alex hadn't been training for like a year because he was working on the startup business and just really focused and driven on that. And he was just all intellectual psyche, energy was pouring into that. And so during that time, we like never fought, ever, never had conflict. There wasn't much tension in the relationship. And then he decided in June, he's like, you know what? I need to get back into training. Like he feels that he had left his body for too long. He needs to get back into the body, start training again. Lo and behold, within 6 weeks, he's like, boom, 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 like the Hulk, and he's all jacked up. But I noticed just even within a few weeks of him training consistently 5 days a week, that some of this suppressed masculine, that he had suppressed certain aspects and traits of the masculine for that whole year where he was all working in intellectual psychic energy, some of the suppressed stuff was coming out. And he would become, he was reacting to me very differently. Whereas we love to roast each other. We love to, knock jokes on our own characteristics on a daily basis. And I started to notice he was becoming a little actually more sensitive when I'm roasting him. And both of us were able to recognize that started when he started training. So certain chemical things and certain connections to his body developed more of an over masculinity where he lost touch with some of that feminine balance of like seeing through something, being able to be receptive, take a joke and stuff like that. And so you can see how like these different cycles, different phases, different seasons may bring out these forces in different ways. It's being able to recognize when they're out of balance. And that's what the healing of the inner masculine is truly all about. And so when you ask yourself, sometimes it might be easier to start with the question, what are the characteristics of men who carry a positive masculine representation or avatar that I like? What are the characteristics of men that carry a negative or toxic avatar of the masculine? It may be easier to start with that question because it's outside, and then you can start working yourself in by asking, if I were a man, I would be free to do this, or I would focus on that. My priorities would be this. I would be limited by this. And, a list reasons why I'd want to be a man, reasons I don't want to be a man or wouldn't want to be a man. That way you start external and you work your way in can be somewhat of a safer way to approach that and look at ways in which your own inner masculine is imbalanced with the feminine. And again, we go much deeper on all of this when we start the course webinar series on the heroine's journey. As in all of these videos, all of these things that we are covering of each gateway, these are really tip of the iceberg. So it's like the newsletters that go out each week are like the tip of the iceberg to the video we do Fridays, which is then the tip of the iceberg to the course. So we're chipping away very slowly to sort of like open things up and allow more of a intellectual understanding of it. And then when we start the webinar course series, or the course webinar series, then we will really go into more of the embodied soul connecting understanding of these things, because each heroine is just so different. If we only looked at the heroine's experiences, there would no one heroine is the same. And then we look at all of the other variables you put into that. And so it's really important to start out understanding it intellectually and then moving into more of the embodied understanding of it. One last thing I will touch on is, as you begin to heal the inner masculine, sort of the, waving the white flags of the battle between the masculine spirit and the feminine soul, you may begin to experience dreams that have male characters. So these male dream characters are really representing your own inner masculine. So it could be you had a dream about an ex-boyfriend or an ex-husband, or you had a dream about you and your brother, or maybe you don't even know who it was, or maybe it was a famous person. These qualities of these male characters in your dreams are representing your own inner masculine. So pay very close attention to those. These are the messengers. These are the messengers from your own unconscious saying, this is the inner masculine rising in you. Look at these archetypes or these avatars and study them and see how they reflect what's coming up in you. Next week, we won't be doing a video in this series. We're going to skip next week. Next week is all about the book club. So I'm going to recommend books and videos that are really going to prepare you for Gateway 10. This is the union. And not only prepare you for number 10, which we're going to be doing on the 17th, October 17th, we're going to wrap it up. But next week, we're going to do some book reviews that are really great supplemental reading and studying for something like this. So I will see you guys on the 17th. If you're not signed up for our newsletter yet, look below. You can sign up for that. There's no attachments to it. It's just simply you'll get an email every week covering each of the heroine's gateways and invitation to BodhiBuilding Institute, where you can join us every Monday for open Q&A and office hours. So we will see you in 2 weeks.